Hello everyone, my name is Chitra Goswami and this video is for the summary of lesson number 202 and the name of the lesson is Art of Conversation. And the objective of this lesson is that students will be able to understand the importance of attitudes like being humble, open-minded and respectful in conversations. So for the first step, you are going to begin by asking students whom they seek advice from when making life decisions. And you will list their responses on the whiteboard. Then you will ask the following questions. That as young individuals, what common advice do you receive from people in your life? Example, study hard, find a stable job, be cautious at night, etc. Second step, you will ask that do you think all advice is the same or do you think some advice is more important? You will allow students to express their opinions and you will divide the class into pairs and give each pair a prompt to discuss together. You will provide sentence starters to guide their discussion. For example, that in my opinion, advice from dash is more important because dash. And the second is, I think all advice is important because dash. They can refer part A in their SRB while giving responses, and after the discussion, you will gather the class back together and ask a few pairs to share their thoughts. For the third step, you are going to share that in part B, you have a chance to understand why attitudes matter when listening to advice. You will ask students to take turns reading the text in part B, and you have to make sure they understand by posing questions and discussing points with the students. Additionally, you can also ask them to share examples of dealing with advice well or poorly. You will tell students that you will share one set of steps that may be useful to them when they encounter advice from someone close to them, even when they don't agree with the advice given. You will go through the steps and ask them for examples. First, you will briefly explain that understanding advice is more important for making good decisions in life, and you will use simple language to convey this concept. Next is a guided reading and discussion part. First, you will divide the classroom into small groups or pairs and you will provide each group with SRB part B. Then you will ask students to take turns reading aloud B1 within their groups and you will encourage them to discuss the question after they read. Now, you will ask groups or pairs to share what they have discussed and you will encourage students to share their own experiences or examples of advice they have received. And you will provide positive feedback and praise for the participation and understanding. And you are going to follow the same for B2 and B3 as well. For the fourth step, you are going to briefly explain the purpose of the role play activity, which is to practice handling difficult advice from family members in different ways. Next is a guided role play, and for this you will divide the classroom into small groups of 3 or 4 students and you will provide each group with a scenario involving a family member giving advice, and for this you can refer to part C of the SRB. Then you will assign roles to each student in the group. One student plays the role of the family member giving advice, another plays the role of a person receiving the advice, and if needed, others can observe and provide feedback. You will encourage students to act out the scenario, focusing on clear communication and understanding. And after each role play, you will ask the observing students to provide feedback on what went well and what could be improved. And we are going to rotate roles so that each student has the opportunity to play different roles in the scenario. Next is discussion, and after all groups have completed their role plays, you are going to lead a brief discussion to compare the different approaches taken by the groups. Last is a discussion, and for this you are going to ask 2 questions from the students. The first question is, how were the 2 types of conversations different? Which do you think was more effective? And the second question is, the parents in each role play can share how they felt during the role play. How open were they to hearing their child's opinion? For the fifth step, you will explain to the students that they will have the opportunity to plan a difficult conversation they want to have with someone close to them. You will emphasize that this is a chance to practice what they have learned about handling advice and communication. The guided planning for this part is that you will ask students to share about a specific situation where they need to have a conversation with someone close to them about advice or a problem. You will instruct students to list out the sequence of ideas they want to convey in the conversation, and you will encourage them to consider the following. The first is, what is the main point or issue they want to discuss? The second is, what are some possible reactions or responses from the other person? The third is, how can they express their thoughts and feelings clearly and respectfully? And the fourth is, are there any compromises or solutions they can suggest? You will encourage the students to think individually but make yourself available to provide assistance and answer any questions they may have. After this is an individual completion that is optional. If students are comfortable sharing, you will allow them to share their plans with the class. For the 6th step, you are going to conduct the wrap-up in the form of stand-up and sit-down activity. And for the 7th step, you are going to ask the students to log in into their Duolingo account and you will let the students begin their Duolingo practice. Lastly, you are going to acknowledge the students for what they did well during the session, and you will conduct the pledge. Thank you so much.